I like the last part about it's coming down, this country coming down. That's exactly what's getting ready to happen. We're going to touch on some of that today. My name is Bobby Hemmitt. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm originally from South Carolina. I went to Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, and also Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been doing this I've been studying about 7 years. I've been doing this. I've been speaking about 2 years now, and into some deeper studies, some esoteric studies for the last 2-3 years. And first I learned the history, then I went into the mystery. So we all know the history now. Most people in here know the history. But now it's time to study the mystery. Since this is Black History Month, I want to do a little bit of historical research at first. We're going to dig deeper into the original Hebrew of blue-black people, which I'm going to go into the science with them, because we're coming into the time of a coming of a Messiah. There's more than one Christ figure. There's 16 crucified saviors. You get the book Cursed Graves, it bears witness to that, and you just know of the tale of one and thinking that is the Christ figure. There's more than one Christ figure. So I want to touch on some things based on the origins of the Hebrews. Origins of the Hebrews. There's we want to deal with it first. But first I want to do something, because I speak long, and I'm blessed to go pull these libations. When I pull these libations to the gods, what happens is what might take 2, 3, 4 hours might seem like 4 or 5 hours, might seem like 2 hours. That's the way it works. Most people say, "Douglas, boy, we've been into that long." Now, number one, before I do this, we must get one thing straight. All of the ancient gods that you know of is the same God. Now, if anybody want to challenge this, feel free to do this now. The same God of the Muslims is the same God of the Christians, is the same God of the ancient Egyptians, is the same God of the Buddhists, the Hindus, the Mesoamerican cult, as far as the sector, the same God. You understand? This is the same God, and we must get out of labels, because this is what the goal and the intent of the brotherhood that presides in the heavens that we know of, an actual brotherhood whom I'm in touch with, as well as other brothers and sisters on the planet, that said that the new call for the eon is to get out of labels and think of oneness, because it is one God. I have to stress that, because some people think that their God is different than the other gods, and that is sheer ignorance. He who knows one book knows none. There's no religion higher than truth. You understand? A person in this part of the world is going to have his rendition or his aspect of the same God different. Just as you talk different. Just as black people are different people all over. Just as you have different cultures, you would have the same God. So we have had a 3,000-year fight over culture, other than the actual gravy or the meat that's up under that. And so we must get into that when we pull these libations and all. To let you know that we say, I pray to Allah, I pray to Jesus, I pray to what you call it. And I'm just going to tune that out. We're talking about the same God. You understand? The same God. We can bear witness to that, and we can prove that. If it's not true, why in the devil is in the Quran you have the same angelic host of the gods that you have in the Bible, you have in the Holy Quran? If it's not the same God. We'll get into that science today. So what I want to do is I want to pull these libations to the ancestors. Well, some people say, well, oh, you worship an ancestor. No. In your Bible, John chapter 10, verse 34 through 6. Is it not written in your law that ye are gods? This is what Jesus is telling his disciples. Just as I have done great works, greater work you shall do. Be ye perfect as I am. Now, you can't have two perfects. Jesus is saying, be ye perfect as I am. He's saying, be identical to me. Now, there's a science in rising yourself to a Christ level that we have to get to. This is a science, but yet we think we know it all, because we are stuck in ignorance and we're stuck in fear. Fear of going to hell, and that hell that doesn't exist, because you are in that hell right now. That's right. In any hell that they talk about in mythology, which is talking about a whole nother metaphysical plane. It's not talking about a hell up under the ground. Because if you go up under that ground and keep you in fear, okay? If you had the answer based on your spirituality, you wouldn't be sitting in this situation that you're in now. So obviously God is telling you to study to know thyself approved, which is in your Bible. And people will perish from a lack of knowledge. Right? So we want to call on these gods. We're going to call on gods, several gods. When I call them out, these several gods from all across Africa that we put into the world. Now, why did I say gods? I want to get that straight right now. Because you said, oh, you worshiping many gods. You see these pictures of these different, some of these are gods. Some of these are regular people. You see those pantheons of different gods? In Christianity, you say God is everywhere. Well, the African was smart enough to show you that God was everywhere. In Islam, they say Allah, the 99 names of Allah, which is the names of the attributes of Allah. Well, in Africa, they actually showed you the attributes, and when you put them all together, it was like a function in nature. When you put them all together, it meant the one God or the God one. And I didn't bring the book. I always should bring that book. It's called From Fetish to God in Ancient Egypt, where Ewalis Bud said, the last year of his life, and I have been studying this religion and the ancient Egyptian, ancient Kemetic culture for years, and I have concluded that I was wrong the whole time. It was a monotheistic religion from the beginning, and it is the same religion that your Christian God, your Islamic God, and all sprung up out of. He said I was wrong this whole time. But what they did is they understood by teaching you what is called the nettas, the gods that represented the one God. When you put them together, it represented a puzzle. Does anybody have problems with that? You know what I'm saying? Because we need to internalize some things now. You understand? And so, in your Bible, they talk about the same gods. They just turned them into angels. They turned them into angels. And then you say, okay, we got the angel with the God. They talk about the same gods. When you put them together, it represents the one God or the God one. And you know, the most ignorant thing on the planet is most of the preachers that's preaching in the churches. But now, we have seen the actual black nation crumble. Whereas, as I quote again, in my section alone, around the AU Center, there is 94 churches that sit in the middle of the worst area ever. Now, your church is supposed to reflect the community. And if your community is decayed, degradation, that means there's got to be something wrong now with the doctrine that once saved you out of slavery. But as like that snake venom, if you take it too long, not only did it kill the snake bite, but you would have to take another venom to kill the snake venom. This is what has happened to the religion now. Because you did not study the know thyself approved as the Bible said it. Okay? So, we want to get that through. So, I want to give you these gods. We're going to call off some Yoruba god. This is the god Obatala that presides over the ceremony at this time. So, I go Obatala, you go Ashe. Obatala, Ashe. Heru, who is the Christ figure, that you worship in your church, that is the true Christ figure called Kim Heru, which means the black Christ. Ashe. The black god Krishna in India. Ashe. The black god Buddha in Asia. Ashe. The black god Osiris or Osar in ancient Kemet. Ashe. The black goddess Aset or Isis that you know of in Kemet. Ashe. The black goddess Sekhmet, the god of destruction, the god that's going to tear up this stuff, that's doing these hurricanes in jail. Sekhmet. Ashe. The black goddess Oya, who is a form of Sekhmet. Ashe. The black goddess in India, Kali, who is a form of Sekhmet. The black goddess Shakti and Shiva, the two gods and goddess that is a form of the great Kundalini rising in Kemet, in Asia. Ashe. The black Jeshua ben Pandera, Jeshua meaning Hebrew for Jesus, Ben meaning son of, and Pandera meaning the panther skins that Jesus went into the coat and learned in Kemet. Ashe. The black god Allah, which you have the Kaaba in Mecca, represents that first Adam, which means the black. The Ka is the outside skin and the Ba is the soul, meaning the black man and his black soul, that we can prove with the attributes and the numbers that add up to melanin in the body. The actual Kaaba. We say Allah. Ashe. The blue-black god Sut, which is the first primordial god of Hemmitt, coming out of the temple of Dendera, which is the same as Allah in Arabia. Ashe. Okay, I guess that's enough. I guess that's enough for right now. That's the spirit we do. Now I want to do some ancestors. I'm going to bring in a few. My father, Ali Hemmitt. Ashe. My grandmother, Irene Shaw. Ashe. My grandfather, Raymond Shaw. Ashe. My aunt, Mabel Ford. Ashe. Any other ancestors? Ashe. 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 Ashe.
Henrietta Keith.
Ashe. Any more? Give me two more. Ashe. Well, that do it. That do both. Now, Honorable Elijah Muhammad tells you to worship a God other than yourself is to worship a God not written in your law, ye are God. John chapter 10, verse 34 to 36 in the King James Version. Also, if I got a bucket of water, as I said before, it represents the universal God, and I take a cup and dip in that bucket of water, is not the contents in the cup of water the same as the contents in the bucket? It's the same. So you are the microcosm of the macrocosm. You are the smaller universe of the great universe. Get the Holy Kabbalion here, the laws of Tahuti. It breaks down that. That's based on you because you have the fabric that is in the triple blackness of space called melanin. We've got the mind-brain report. When they took it back to the labs and examined it in labs, they found out that the Kaaba had the same breakdown of the melanin, which makes you black, that is concentrated in the base of your skull and the top of your spine, the medulla oblongata chakra, called the mouth of God. That same concentrated melanin is in the Kaaba, which is worshipped as God in Mecca, coming from the black stone of Ethiopia. They found out that the same compound was in you. So let's get down to some business. Number one, an archaeological evidence and anthropological evidence predate now. Where did all your knowledge come from? It came out of the Nile Valley, and it came out of the priests who had 360 degrees of knowledge. They inducted the Greeks in the mystery system. Later on, the Moors, after they went into a dark age, the Moors of Spain, the black Moors, traveled up into Europe and set up 16 universities and actually taught the European how to be civilized again, as well as Moses and the whole 9 yards. The key to this is that if the Egyptian priests had 360 degrees of knowledge, now who are you going to believe? You going to believe the white man? Or you going to believe the Egyptian priest or the Kemetic priest? In the temple of Seti I, which is the first holy land in Abydos, Kemet, in the temple of Seti I, or the tombs of Seti I at Biblium El Manuk, which is a form of that Seti I, which can be documented also in some part of Diop's book, African Origins of Civilization, Myth, and Reality. In there you have 4 races of men. In those 4 races of men, you have the Nasi, or the Nesi, which is the West African black. You have the Ruti, which is the East African black, who are your most ancient men. You have the Hemu, which is a Semitic, but it's not the same Semitic that you know of now. If you take the white Jew out and just say that the Arab, the white Arab, that's not the Semitic. The Semitics at that time would look about like me. I would be a Semitic, you see. One that was a blue black man in that area one time that the actual Aryan race came down and mixed with, which would be a mulatto. But it would not be a white person that you see now calling themselves a Semitic, or even a white Arab that's been over there quite some time calling himself a white Semitic. We're talking about that Semitic. That's called the Hemu. Then you have one called the Tamahu. Tama meaning white, and Tama meaning created, and white meaning white, light, and bright. The created white people. In the temple, at the bottom of the temple, it says that the Ruti, which is the Egyptian, and the Nezi, which is the West African, who are the most ancient of men and the superior of men, God men, created the Tamahu. He said it was an evil scientist called Yakub. The Hyksos kings, who are Set-Typhon worship, who were charged with being evil worship, but it wasn't really evil worship. They just had a dispute going on in Kemet, one religion taking over the other, talking about the same God again, just a little fight. In there, you had the Hyksos kings worship a god by the name of Yakub Ker. You can get this in Donald Redford's book, Egypt, Canaan, Israel in Ancient Times. The Shrine of Yakub Kerr is still there in Ancient Kemet by Donald Redford. Also wrote another book called Akhenaten, the Heretic King. Yakub Kerr, also in Bright's, another white scholar, History of Israel, that talk about that Yakub Kerr documented in history. Yakub is a Hebrew name, also is an Egyptian name, a Kemetic name for Jacob. Also 2 digits, documented in Charles French's book, Echoes of the Old Dark Land, that you can get from right here. Now, that medicine and all is created for a great... There's nothing can kill you if you're on the right frequency. Not even a bullet. You can stop a bullet if you're on the right frequency. They got people, bullet go right through. Got a brother Yusuf. Met a guy from Malaysia that he met in Florida. Brother was a bad scientist. He was up there. Gave him the ritual how to stop a bullet. So there's nothing that you can't do, and what we're going to prove later on today. Now, so much for that. You all know who the beast is, and if you don't know, then it's not for that. Number one, I must say also too, this is not to convince anyone in here. It's not to make you believe. It's not to convince you. It really don't make a difference by now, because we got to do this thing anyway, because they're moving on us as we speak. Now, Moses come from? He was an Egyptian priest. You remember the story? Now, if you just go by the Bible, he was raised up in Pharaoh's house, right? You remember that? Now, if Pharaoh is a black man, right? How in the devil can he be anything but black and he gonna fool the Pharaoh? Oh, you my son. Right? So, the actual people of that race had to have been nothing but blue-black people, and that's all it was. All you had was a lineage of people leaving and establishing the religion that they got out of Kemet in Egypt. And they established that religion in Egypt. Number one, we go back to the Temple of Dendera, that I should have brought a picture of that, where we have this calendar that's 90,000 years old, and in the middle of that calendar, you have the goddess Apit of the triple blackness of space. Her name is Nut, Apit, represented as a hippopotamus goddess because it's got a big stomach and it's pregnant and come out of the water. She sits in the northern hemisphere of the heavens, which she is the triple blackness of space in the constellation of Draco. She gets pregnant. Now, we've got to look at science. She's so black till you can't see her. So she has to reveal herself so you can see her. So she has a son who takes a 7, the number 7, which is a netter axe or the god axe, and he cuts her vagina open at the south gate, which he reveals himself as the first primordial star of all time, called the dog star, Sirius, which is the largest star in our hemisphere that we know of, which governs our solar system and 11 other solar systems. He reveals himself as the god Sut, S-U-T, which means black, both in a star and human form. Because once Allah sets up a law, once he does something, he set up the law. That means that he had to be in the human flesh. We'll break into the science of that. Now, that's when they say the black man and black woman is God. Now, that particular star is the 8th one out of 7 stars called Sirius. It's called Sut, and it's in the temple of Dendera, which is one of the oldest temples. Well, the actual concept of the calendar is 90,000 years old when we started recording history. At one time, we didn't have history. We was radiating at a level of godhood where we didn't have to record history. It was all up here and all in here. We were one. We were the Elohims, as they say in the Bible. The Elohims, which mean the one God. We were a part of the one. Then, as we fell more into the 3rd dimension, we had to establish history, and this is where we set up the mystery schools in Kemet to record history. At one time, we didn't record history. We only started recording history this time in this 26,000-year cycle. That is up, you see. Then we started recording history at the end of the 26,000-year cycle, about roughly 6,000 years ago. But the concept of this, what I'm talking about, is 90,000 years. Now, it's 90,000 years. Now, what happened? In Kemet, around the 14th, Kemet is Egypt of Cam, which means black, the black land and the black people. Around the 14th and 15th dynasty, you had a group of people called the Hyksos. Now, what we have found out is the Hyksos king was not a foreign people, because there was a fight going on against the religion. They worshiped the first blue-black god kind of got to the point where the other people, the Osirian drama or the Amun-Ra, which is the same religions, is just another concept of worship the same God. They had a little falling out. The Sut type of worship took over for about 150 years. It took over. And they worship Set type or Sut type and the blue-black God. After 150 years, a Pharaoh by the name of Amos, who was the son of Second Nimrod, drove them out. Drove them to a city by the name of Abrius or something. Abrius, whatever. Drove them to this city. They later on left that city and went to the city of Syria and built a city in the country called Judea. And then they called it Jerusalem. Okay? Now, the Jews, Judea was a name for the outcast Jews that left the city of Abrius in Hemmitt. The city was called the city of Typhon, which is Set Typhon, the first blue-black mother. Now, we're not talking about good and evil here. We're talking about two religions establishing each other, just like you have churches here. Well, you got one church that break off from this church. You know, the CMEs broke off from one church, the AMEs, and the AMEs broke off from the white church in Philadelphia with Richard Allen. You know the whole deal. Some of the same concepts, and nothing we're talking about the way you worship, but we're not talking about the different gods. Okay? It's all one God. Now, the Hebrew language was not an original language, which means it wasn't original to the Hebrews. It was borrowed from the Egyptians or the Kemites and considered sacred. Now, I want to read something to you, because we got to document all this stuff, but I want to read some stuff to you. Let's see, this is page 169 as we move right along. I'm setting you up for what is going on when we talk about this Messiah. It says, the Hebrews composed of hieroglyphic symbols and myths and their from the Egyptians and their gods. The imageries and allegories, the divinities, the Hebrew writings, the Egyptians appertain to the Set Typhon and cult. The Jewish knew the departure and the development were made out of the oldest materials, the original mythical in Egypt, but converted into the history of the Jews, because the Jews were a tribe of Egyptians who revolted from the established religion. Jehovah can be traced back to the Great Mother. You said, I talk about this Great Mother with the big hippopotamus stomach, which is the triple blackness of space, which is the womb where Mama tell you that Allah created himself out of the feminine half of the universe. Same God. We're going to get into some Islam too. But the first Jehovah that they talk about, Jehovah you talk about, is a feminine concept, which meant the Great Mother. Now, let's go on. I just got to document these things. I want to run through some history to get to what I'm talking about, but we got to get through some history, because we're talking about history here. Everything all right? You all get the tape if you want to learn some more. The word, let's see, let's get this right. Okay. Now, Ramesses II, who is the king of the Exodus, worship the same religion as the so-called Jews of the Sut or the Set Typhons, because his father was named Seti I. His father, the temple where the white boys, the Tamahu that I talk about, was built by Ramesses II at the age 21 when his father Seti I died. Okay? He was a follower of that religion. Now, that religion that you call, we would say Jehovah, or we say the word El, E-L, because the Hebrews, once they traveled out and went in Jerusalem, the true word name for that religion was lost, which was the god Sut, S-U-T, which means black. It was lost. Another word for that was El. Okay? Now, Sut was the god of the Nessi, which is the black people of Ethiopia. Remember I talk about there's a blue-black people called the Nessi and the Ruti? Well, that Nessi, the name of that god was called Sut Nessi. Okay? The name of that god was called Sut Nessi. He later on became a god by the name of Aten. A-T-E-N. And he was working, which meant the sun of the horizon. He's also known as a god called Jah, which is Jehovah, which means the sun in Sirius. We talk about the same dog star. We'll go into the Quran and find this also. Everybody with me so far? Okay. Now, we're trying to get this thing and show you how this whole Christianity, Islam, Judaism starts. But we talk about the one religion because it's all ours, so we don't have to worry about it. It's all the same. We talk about the same science. Right. So we don't have to worry about one better than the other. It's all the same. It's right. The way it comes out of Egypt. Okay. Then rose a king by the name of Akhenaten. Akhenaten was killed. He tore down all the other priesthood in his day. And he put up one god, Aten, which his mother was Queen T. She was from Ethiopia. So he was influenced about this one god, or the god one, which is the same one all the rest of them have. He said, well, okay, I'll tell you what. We understand that you got to teach the people the different attributes of God. But what we'll do is, we'll just say, well, look, since this stuff is getting a little wild and out of hand, we'll just make it to the one God, Aten. Because at the time when he was growing up in Kemet had already had what is called a cosmopolitan Egypt, where you had all kind of outsiders and they started partying all day. They had all kind of different groups, just like you had here in America, but nothing is never evil as this place. We talking about civilized people. They just started getting further away from the customs that the glue that held the thing together spiritually. Because remember now, in our culture, our nature was that of spirituality, so we did everything in a spiritual content. So when he was a little boy, he saw these things, so when he grew up, he decided to do something about it. He said, well, and the name of that god was Medu-Ra-Atan, which means, Medu means the word, Ra means the sun, and Atan means Sirius, or Sirius. So that means the word of the sun in Sirius, which is the same Jah, which is the same Jehovah, because Jehovah means the great mother, and her son would be Atan Asut. So we talk about the same worship of the great mother and the sun, which is the first primordial sun. So he said, I'm just going to cut it off Atan, which means to start this, which you had one big sun, was not talking about the sun that we know of here. It was talking about the sun behind the sun, Sirius. Our Earth goes around the sun every 365 days. Our sun goes around a greater sun every 25 to 26,000 years. That's called a great year. I'm going to talk about the 25,000 year period. That's called a great year. That great year is called the end of an eon, which the Jews or the Hebrews say the end of the world. It's not talking about the end of the world. It never was the end of the world. It's talking about the end of an eon, which what is on top goes to the bottom, and what is on the bottom goes to the top. Who's on the bottom? Can I get a glass of water or something? Who's on the bottom? Check? Okay, now. So he established this Aten based on Sirius, the sun behind the sun. At this time, in Kemet, when he established this, he got killed or taken out by the priesthood, not because of the Aten. It was all one God, and they knew of the Aten because the Aten was as old as them. Came from Ethiopia. It was also in Kemet as Medu-Ra-Atan. He got killed because he got rid of the armies. He wanted non-violence, and he wanted peace, and he wanted integration, and he wanted all of these things. This is where Gandhi got his non-violence from, that Martin Luther King got his non-violence from. Not Martin Luther King studied Gandhi, where he should have been studying Akhenaten, the first blue-black king, who married Nefertiti in Kemet, who was a mulatto like me. She was not a white woman, she was a mulatto. Nefertiti, which means beautiful one. Ramesses II, who was the first, his father was the one who gave you the actual Temple of Seti I, who came a few years after Akhenaten, married a woman by the name of Nefertari, which is beautiful one. She was from Nubia. Which means, most beautiful one. Nefertiti, which means beautiful one. Nefertari means most beautiful one. You see. They show, that's the Berlin bust that everyone you see all on the earrings and stuff. That's not the real Nefertiti. They took a copy of the real one, and we got pictures of the real one we'll show during the break. which is the real Nefertiti, and the other one, what you get a chance to see, is a fake one. So now he got taken out because he let go of the army and people started invading and different things, and because of his political power and destroying the priesthood, they took him out. But the god Aton was already there. Now, then comes Moses, who's about, I think they say around about 15 years after Akhenaten, supposedly, maybe longer, who was a student of Akhenaten and the monotheistic approach of, let's get rid of the scientific way of monotheism and just get to the one thing, you see, because you people are getting a little out of hand. He was a student, and he was a high priest in Kemet, okay? He was a high priest in Kemet. He was a student of Akhenaten, okay? There was, by this time, remember I told you at first, they kicked out these Hyksos kings, kicked them out, and drove them to Arius, and then they went to Syria and set up Jerusalem and Judea. By this time, the time of Moses, their people had already traveled back into Kemet and set up little small pockets of population of people, just like we have of different ethnic groups here, you see. And they brought back the religion that came out of Kemet, like making a circle. Okay? You got that? They traveled back into Kemet, which Abraham means, literally translated, the father. It just means the father. Okay? At the actual time, so the God of Abraham, like God, Abraham got a different God than the Egyptians. You see, it just meant the father. Number one, the Jews was never in slavery in Kemet because the last pyramid was built 100 years before the birth of Abraham, supposedly. Now, the 100 years before the birth of Abraham. So how the devil could they build ancient cities for ancient Kemet? We understand that this is an allegory, and it is a prophetic history to talk about a people coming across the Atlantic years to come. Because the time that the Jews supposed to have been in there does not add up to 400 years. We're talking about another people that will come, which will be the offspring of all them black people, not just the Jews, of all those black people that will travel across the Atlantic, and that's talking about you, when they say you'll be in bondage in Egypt for 400 years in a place not like your own and be afflicted. Okay? And after 400 years, I'll bring you who? See, after 400 years, I'll bring you Elijah. Now, they come back into Kemet. Some things go on, most disputes go on, and they get kicked out and taken to the same place of Arius that their ancestors a couple of hundred years ago went to before they got kicked, so before they left and went on to Jerusalem. At this time, you had a priest by the name of Musa, which you have the Musa of Moses, where you have Tutmosis, Akmosis, these different Moses kings, which is an Egyptian name, came a high priest. Remember this, because I got some stuff to tell you about this high priest and what he did. A high priest came to them and actually gave them the religion and of the ancient Kemites, took 10 of the negative confessions that's in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I got 2 versions of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the book coming forth by the, you know, the 10 Commandments. They got the 147 admirations of Mayat, which is the 147 negative confessions, is in here. He took 10 of them out of here and gave to them, as well as constructing the religion and gave it to them. Now, also constructed something of the Ark of the Covenant, that I got to get into more science on the Ark. Now, gave it to them, boom, they got kicked out again. Got kicked out again, went across the desert again, going into Jerusalem, the same cycle. Okay, now. Their God by the name of El, Ar, is also the word Her or Har in there. Horus or Har, Heru is in there. It comes from a word Sut, is equals Sut, which is the first blue-black god. Israel is, which means Isis, Ra, which is the god Ra, and El, which is also the god, El, which is also the god, the first god El that you get also means the child, which is also Horus. So you got the Egyptian trinity right in the actual Israel. You got Osiris, Isis, and Heru or Horus. Or Osar, Aset, and Horus. Everybody with me? Everybody all right? Okay, now. A word of God, Adani, is also one of the names of God also, which later on we have located a God that came in the 20th century to lift the white man up, to get him right, but to tell us something I'm going to get into in a few minutes, called AWAS, A-I-W-A-S-S, AWAS. Okay. All right. In Kemet, or in your Bible, they say that the Jews or Jesus or the religion or the faith rode out of Egypt riding the ass. That ass, if we break that ass down, it was a symbol of the god Soot, the first blue-black god Soot. And let me read something to you so we can document these things, so we can go on. I'm just setting you up, and I hope y'all having a good time. Is this thing clear to everybody? Mm-hmm. Okay, you get the video and you go back over and study it, because we're trying to make a good video here, so you can go and take these things and study these things. Mm-hmm. Check? You see. All right, now, the ass is one of the types of Soot, the dog star. Similar to Lu, or Au, the coming one, is a name of an ass. These types belong to the cup of Soot Typhon. Soot is the sun, which is the blue-black god, which is the first star Sirius, and Typhon is the great mother, Apit, or Tyre, or Nut, which means the triple blackness of space. During the Sabine period, or the period of the introduction of the solar keeping, the time-keeping by Moses, Soot Typhon was called the ass. Also, now, I just wanted to document that. Now, let's go on. S-I-F equals Jesus, was the coming son of the Messiah. Iu, the son of the mother, the coming of the double harvest, Heru. Now, what is the double harvest of Heru? In the Nation of Islam, they tell you that they have something called the number 19, that Sister Tynetta Muhammad talks about. The number 19 is Allah on the horizon, but the number 19 also talk about the coming Jesus, or the coming son, is called the double Heru or Horus, which is the forerunner of Jesus, which Jesus was a priest of, that taught this in Palestine, that they said he was, but it's the forerunner because one of the names is Kim Heru, which means the black Jesus, or the black Messiah, which that Messiah also, who was a Christ figure that you know of Jeshua ben Pandera, was a black man also. You understand? There's evidence of that in your own Bible. He was just a priest of this whole thing that came out of Egypt. Now, the ever-coming one, the son of the mother, the coming of the double harvest, of the double horizon, that number 19 in the double horizon, which means Jah, which means the sun in Sirius, also means Atan, which means the sun in Sirius. Our sun, after it completes that 25,000 year cycle, you have, as above, so below, you have a Messiah, which will take human form. That sun in Sirius is called the Great Sphinx, to sit in the middle of the earth. And that's called Haramakit. Heru or Horus on the horizon. You all listen to this very close, because there's some things that's going on. We got to understand this. Horus on the horizon, which is the Sphinx, to sit in the middle of the earth. Or you say Allah on the horizon also. Now, Hetep is a preacher. The Hebrew preacher is identified with Jesus. What it's saying is these actual things that we talk about, that we say that is in the Bible that you kill for, yes, but they're older than the teachings of Jesus. They go back thousands of years. Okay? Back to black, even though Jesus was black, he was just one of the Messiahs. You got 16 crucified saviors around the world. He was just one of those Messiahs. But the original Messiah is the one that's going to come back, who is the other representation that said that this thing will come back also. This is the key to this, because when I get into some other things, where is it coming and who is it coming to? Okay? Now, everybody all right? Mm-hmm. Okay. The Jews were northern Ethiopians. Okay? And they worshipped Atan, which is the form of the first blue-black god, Soot. Atan was what they worshipped, were northern Ethiopians, just as Akhenaten's mother was also an Ethiopian. Now, some things on Moses. Moses was educated, as Manetho tells us. Manetho was one of the last priests in Kemet that told the Greeks the history of Kemet. Moses was was educated, as Manetho told us, in the temple of the sun, in the city of the sun. Temple of the sun is a temple in Hemmitt, and the city of the sun is one of the cities of probably of Ra, of Thebes, or one of those cities in also Egypt. He was an Egyptian priest and knew that the Israelites or the Jews were to rule at the culmination of the present age, which means the original Jews. Now, it was nothing but an ancient Egyptian who was an offspring that was going to travel across the Atlantic. Okay? Now, Moses knew that these people were going to rule because he was an Egyptian priest. Now, at the present age of justice, at the present age of justice, they're talking about something being justified. And we talking about we talking about getting our justice right here now in the new worlds are coming in, and we sitting in the middle of it. You see, all this time we've been praying in church, and we thought that we might not live to see it. The beautiful thing about it is we are the people that's going to live to see it. We bear witness, and we're not talking about no 10 years down the road. We right in the middle of it right now. That's why you people got to get on it right now. And I got the time cycle to get down with this, and not just stuff that I had to calculate. I'm talking about stuff that the people up here done told me. Because you can tap in. But like Farrakhan say, believe it or let it alone. Take it or let it alone. He knew he would return in a period as a world leader and give forth the real justice of the Mosaic power under the new polarity which now manifests in its entirety before the new axial process shall be established. You're talking about the rotation of the earth. At the period of the planet Saturn, there ruled a planet ruler of the sign of Capricorn that will come into conjunction of the unseen planet Capricorn to serve the justified evolution. They're talking about the planet Saturn, which the planet Saturn has the same makeup. If you go into the Holy Kabbalah, which is the precursor or the prerequisite to the Bible, it has the same makeup as the melanin. And Saturn is also called ancient Satan. And a woman thinketh, so in his heart, so is he or she in your Bible. Right? Got to get into the Bible, but like I say, go into the Bible and don't just go by the Bible. Okay? Now, let's go on. The word Adoni is a name for that. The word Jah is a name for that. Jehovah is a name for that. El is a name for that also. Now, Adoni, Jah is the Hebrew El. The Lord has a Bible, is a biblical connection, is the Lord of Israel, spoken in the dwelling between the ark, and was the midst of high. The ark is a point convenient between the heavens and the earth in the constellation of the thigh, known as the ship, as the north, as the holy of holies in entry. Now, we also talking about the ark, but we're not talking about, this is an out-of-print book, but I got some stuff we can do. We're not talking about an ark. We're talking about not Noah's ark. We're talking about other kind of arks. We're talking about flying arks. Turn on your TV every night at 9:30. We're talking about spaceships. We're talking about motherships. So now, when she came to Spelman, somebody asked her, was it UFOs? And she said yes. But see, she's used to being briefed that there are UFOs because she works in those departments. What happened was, she thought about it. She said, Then she went in and said, well, they got to be UFOs, you know. Well, got to be life on other planets. Think of all them other planets out there and all this kind of thing. Try to get that old scientific approach. And still try to say, I don't know. But she kind of messed up and said the wrong things, and she messed up, and the people understood what she was talking about, but she did admit that there were UFOs. Okay? Now, so I wanted to give you that also too. Now, the word also, this word also identifies with the black soot, the soot ha, the soot nesi, the soot nebdi, soot nebdi, which is also the word Baal, the word El, and the word Allah, which we're talking about the black God. Now, let's to go on. Like I said before, the Kaaba, which is the representation that you make the pilgrimage to Mecca, which means the representation of Allah, or the first Adam, which is the black stone. This is the Ka, which is the physical body, and the inside, the Ba, is the soul. So they say that the black stone represents the Ka Ba together, so they're telling you that if the soul is black and the outer shell is black, they mean that God has to be black. Okay? They mean that God has to be black. We're going to get into some science of that in a few minutes to show you exactly what they're talking about. Okay? Now, got 2-3 more points, and we're going to close out, go to break, and we're going to come back and we're going to go into some other science. This is one of the keys. When Moses, before he left out of Kemet, or Egypt, he was an Egyptian priest. They understood by studying the sciences that they could manipulate the forces of the universe. Just like the Indians do that rain dance, that's real. That's real now. Go get a movie, go rent a movie at Blockbuster called Thunderheart, where they tell you on the beginning of the movie, the white men tell you all the time, that in this is a series of events that happened on the Indian reservation in the early 70s. They got a guy in there that could change into animals. You can do all these things. This is serious. You know, he could change, called shape-shifting. It was real. And they told you this stuff was real at the beginning. But you know, we watch things and thinking, oh, you know, it's a movie. White people watch it to study it. The ancient Kemetite priests could manipulate the forces of the universe. Now, in the Osirian story, his evil brother, which is the first Cain and Abel story, cut him up and put him in a chest, nailed the chest together, threw it in the river, in the Nile Valley. His wife recovered it, Set Typhon, which is the second set from this blue-black god set. He's the second set, which is red hair set, red-haired Egyptian Judas, which is this white boy mutant at this time, which is the evil brother talking about an albino. Gets the chest back from Isis, and she said, I'm going to get rid of you for the last time. He cuts the body up into 14 pieces and throw it all over the river. The Egyptian priests in the priesthood could build this chest of Osiris. It was science to call the chest of Osiris. And they could put things in it, and whatever they put in it, whatever this stuff, it was a sacred thing, and it was nothing but a transmitter to God. And it had the power. Go back and look at the Raiders of the Lost Ark, that movie. Everything in the movie with the white boy put the science, because remember, Steven Spielberg is a doggone Jew. And they know this stuff. He's a white Jew. But they know the science. Go look at the movie. They just had it, the Ark of the Covenant being in Kemet, but not in Ethiopia. So he taught the Jews, when they went into the wilderness, he taught them how to build this Ark of the Covenant. And they took the broken pillars of the 10 Commandments that he's supposed to have smashed, and they put them in there. The salt or whatever, the grinds of the 10 Commandments, and put them in the chest. Now he told them, whoever has this chest, now this thing is real, telling you this. Whoever, and go look at the movie and you'll see the genius of God in the movie. Why, it was a big blockbuster in 1981. Said, now listen, whoever has this chest can never be defeated. So they went on through wars and stuff, and they was victorious. They said, but also who has the chest is real Jews. Now, the scene shifts to Ethiopia. Menelik, the son of Solomon, goes to Jerusalem to visit his cousins. Jesus tells you he is the root of Solomon and the root of David and the seed of Solomon. And Solomon is, oh yeah, I'm black and I'm comely. So Jesus got to be black. He's got to be black. Hair is lamb's wood and burnt as brass and fire and, in an oven. You heard of it. He goes to Ethiopia and he takes the Ark of the Covenant from Jerusalem back into Ethiopia, because he was bloodline and it can be transferred from bloodline. Now this is the key. White boy by the name of Graham Hancock, and I think they had the book here, went and found the Ethiopia. They got one here now. It was a hardback book. All the white people bought it. All the white people bought it. Bestseller. Black people ain't heard about it. Black people didn't hear about it almost a year later till I introduced it in Atlanta, Georgia, during the Rastafarians week, where I talked about Haile Selassie's birthday, and I talked about the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia. Went and found the Ark of the Covenant, what they thought was fake, found it in Ethiopia. They got the actual black man in here, a picture of him, Gabriel Mikhail, who is the guardian of the Ark. This is called a sign and seal of Graham Hancock. Took him 10 years, almost got divorced and everything, but he found it. It's right there in Ethiopia. Now, this is the key. I didn't tell you, this is what I came down to tell you. Because remember I talked about the Ark of the Covenant before. Didn't I talk about that before here? I talked about it a little bit. Here goes the second phase of it. Now y'all check this out. He go and he take it back and it's been there now. Takes it back to Ethiopia, and the Ethiopian Jews had it ever since. Whoever has the ark is the real Jews, which we understand that the original Hebrews that traveled to actual Jerusalem was the blue-black Jews, because right now there's blue-black people that have been living there all along. Before the imposter Jew came in. Okay? Just running the things. You understand? You know what I'm saying? There's no more than America. 300, 400, 500, 600 years ago, what you would call an American or a native would not look like white people. Just the same way as the Jews, the same thing in Israel. So, I told you that Menelik came and got it and took it to Ethiopia, but he had to get it because the only way you can take it is through bloodline. Whoever has it is the real Jew. So that tells you that Menelik being from Ethiopia and your Philosopher Jews, which is called the Beta Israel Jews that's there now, which are black Jews in Ethiopia, had to have been some of the original people in the original family, because it was a bloodline becoming that way, because some of the people went to Jerusalem and some went to Ethiopia. Okay? When they had this spread that went on. So now this family is taking it from each other. Now this is the key. Number one, who has it is the real Jews. Well, we know the real Jews are black, because Moses was an Egyptian queen, king, and all this here, and was nothing but black people carrying on. Whoever has it cannot be defeated. It went to Ethiopia. Now remember now, Africa was colonized. All of it. Except where? Ethiopia was the only place in Africa that was not colonized. You understand? Why? Why? Why the Fertile Crescent, the Horn of Africa wasn't colonized?